We did all of Australia as residential property in 48 hours last July, just like crazy, right? Imagine saying you've got every image of every property in Australia and you have, less than a second to give me 35 attributes. And then doing that at like over 95% accuracy as a human would be just like absolutely impossible.
Welcome to UpTech Report. This is our Applied Tech series. UpTech Report is sponsored by TerraLeap. Learn how to leverage the power of video at terraleap.io. Today, I'm joined by my guest, JC Clark, who's based in Dallas area, and he's the CEO at Arturo.ai. Welcome, JC. Good to have you on.
It's great to be here, Alexander. Thanks for having me today.
Now, Arturo, pulling from your website, is an AI-powered platform that derives property insights and predictive analytics from aerial and satellite imagery. So you guys are focused on enterprise clients, have been on the insurance space specifically, taking satellite imagery and being able to pull fascinating data and analytics, but also going into the overall real estate industry as well. Did I get that correct of where you guys are focused on?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. We've really been able to build a very strong base both in the US and abroad with insurers. But as we've done that and we've derived these property insights and information from images versus having people go and attain them, which is lengthy, time consuming, et cetera, expensive. We're also seeing an interesting demand from others that deal with those residential properties, namely the lenders, saying, hey, how could we use this information in new and novel ways to improve our business, just like insurance are doing as well?
In a nutshell, if you had to just paint a picture of really what this pain, this concern, the biggest issue that your clients are facing right now, what is that?
So it's probably useful to share a little bit of background. When you think about an insurance policy for a home, which is where we got started as a spin out from American Family Insurance, when a homeowner wants a quote, when your policy is coming up for renewal for your home after you've got a policy, there's information that insurers really need to have to accurately quote your policy. So you don't go, gosh, this is ridiculously expensive, or go, ooh, I really like this policy, it's very cheap. Then when you go to file a claim or have an issue, it turns out maybe something about your property that was necessary didn't get properly reported. Now it's not covered. And the way that's traditionally happened is very painful. One is, as you as a consumer, they'll say, Alexander, this home you'd like to insure, here's a list of 80 questions about that home. What's the exact square footage? How many roof panels do you have? I'm not sure if you know what a roof panel is, but most consumers don't. Is it architectural shingle roof, or is it asphalt shingle, or is it 3-tab? I'm not sure if you know the difference between the three. I certainly didn't before Arturo, but these are the types of things that insurers need to know about a physical property. And it is very arduous and time consuming for a consumer to accurately obtain or know those bits of information. And none of us want to wake up on a Saturday morning to get an insurance policy and fill out a 60 to 80 questionnaire, a questionnaire. So that's kind of the problem we're solving. The other ways that this data has been obtained is, let's say, an MLS property record from when the home sold. One interesting thing about data like that is it may have been right then, but it might not be right now because homeowners, like I'm actually doing at the moment, are remodeling their properties, adding pools, fences, doing different things. So that data might be outdated. And then the last method of getting this information is really time consuming and expensive, which is a property inspection, or an insurer, just like in a lending transaction, will have someone come inspect the property. Insurers at times do that when they're unaware of whether or not the property is actually what's there is supposed to be there. And that takes several days to weeks to obtain. It can be anywhere from $35 to $350, depending on the size of the property and style. Guess what? Even humans, when they come visit a property and are experts, still make mistakes. And so you miss things, you might not accurately measure or write something down wrong. So that was really the fundamental problem Arturo is solving for insurers, is taking a recent image that we don't collect, but aerial imagery providers collect, like those that sell to Google and Bing and Apple Maps, right? And other mapping technologies we processing as consumers, satellite imaging companies like Maxar, where I was formerly head of commercial product before I joined Arturo CEO, that take these images of properties. We then go, and when an insurer has a consumer like Alexander saying, I want a quote, or my property is coming up for renewal, what our customers will do is they'll reach out to our API, and we will then fetch the latest images of Alexander's property. And we will run those through a series of very proprietary machine learning models that we developed in concert with American Family's data, years of data. And then we'll provide highly accurate information about Alexander's property to our customers in seconds, and in a structured data format too. Like think of it almost like an Excel spreadsheet, a CSV, a structured data response, which means it's in the same format they would have got it had you typed it into the form, or they pulled it from an MLS record, or they digitized that inspection report so that they can go, okay, you've got 22 roof panels and your roof is asphalt shingle. There's no trees hanging over. We do see a pool. Good job, Summer. Now I can properly quote your policy. And again, we're doing that in seconds. For around $1.50 to $2.50 per property, versus again that $35 to $350 that takes weeks and hours to obtain and is expensive, to seconds.
Wow, it's both speed and efficiency on multiple levels. Now, all this ability, though, it sounds like is you're pulling from the other company of all the insights and data and being able to train the machine learning. How was that difficult? Like, take me back now. Help me understand the story here of how Arturo came into existence.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. So I think, one of the really interesting things about Arturo, and having at one of my past startups, got to work very closely with Google when Google purchased a little company called Keyhole, which is now the product we all know and love as Google Earth. And I had this really fortunate opportunity of working with Google's geo team around directions and Street View and Google Earth and Maps for iOS and things like that. And it really blew my mind that there was this amazing amount of learning we all got as consumers from these little things in our hand, telling us where to go and what the front of a building looked like that we were trying to find while driving, et cetera. But from a consumer perspective, we were transformed in our personal lives, but from an enterprise perspective, they're kind of still in the Stone Ages, right? They didn't get the same kind of awesome thing that we all got as individuals. Of course, us as individuals work in enterprises. And so, oftentimes I'd hear like, why can't my business have similar style of information? Now, Google had billions of dollars of investment, literally, to launch Google Earth, Google Maps, et cetera. And it's a very successful property for them as a product today. And so what I really thought, though, was this would be great if some industry could really be disrupted by machine learning, remotely sensed data of properties, which is, of course, how Google built Google Earth and Google Maps, right? But maybe not have to necessarily spend a couple $1 billion. So I was looking for, in my career, an opportunity to, say, where can I apply a similar style approach, but to an industry that's ripe for disruption? And while I was at Digital Globe as head of commercial product, looking for a place to be disruptive, American Family Insurance approached me and said, hey, we're using one of your machine learning products on satellite imagery. We'd love to show you what we're doing. And ultimately, I was just blown away by what they had done, which is they had developed about 2 years of research and development around taking satellite, aerial, even ground level imagery, and in seconds, understanding a property. It was a little limited at the time. It was about 12 or 15 kind of characteristics about a property. But it was one of those things, I was like, the light bulb moment. I'm like, this is what I've been looking for. So really enthused when they said, listen, we would like to spin this technology out. We think that it has huge market applicability to other insurers. We're already using it. We're already finding value. And you know what? There's other industries that probably could be disrupted by creating this type of property information so accurately and quickly, like lending, like real estate, et cetera. So ultimately, I joined almost 3 years ago, August 6th. So just shy of a month from now, it'll be 3 years. And we spun the technology out. And to your question about the machine learning and training data, we also spun out years of American Family policy data and insurance history data and claims data and inspection data, where those inspectors go to the properties, right? And why is that important? Because it gave us this huge springboard to build really, really accurate machine learning models on all sorts of instances of styles of property and the types of things you might see that otherwise you're guessing, right? You're looking at a Google Maps image or something, you're going, I think that roof doesn't look great, but whereas we had information like this roof has this issue right now, and there was a person on it this date and time, so we can go back to a point in time near that in the imagery libraries, go, yep, there it is, use those instances to train machine learning models. And that's actually been really, really awesome because our current customers see the value that was created by American Family's data helping improve and make our models better, and have then also said, you know what? We'd like to help improve as well. And so a lot of our customers work very closely with us in some form of bringing their data, whether it be knowledge of what's happening inside an image that their claims adjusters have, or their appraisers have, or their underwriters have, Or at times, some of them are like, here's training data, like here's a bunch of hail instances on roofs. Like this really happened. That helps us train models that detect, let's say, hail damage in solar panels or skylights.
Coming out of Maxar Technologies, if I understand correctly.
Correct.
And I'm trying to understand the connection also to family. American Family. It's like you already had all this access, like a startup out of nowhere wouldn't have access to all that. So it's like immediately you're off to the races so much further. It sounded like, was that the case? It's like you had all the right pieces, the right time, and all right, now we can turn it into a new spin out and be able to launch it from there.
Yeah, I think so. I think, one of the unique advantages Arturo has, instead of, being a group of guys and gals in a garage going, wouldn't it be cool if we tried to solve this problem, which I've been one of at least the guys in the garage doing that at some points in my career. This was a business, a very large Fortune 500 entity, one of the oldest, most respected insurers in the United States, that was looking to innovate. And their question was, this data is old, it's outdated, it's often inaccurate, it's expensive if we have to send a human. How could insurance change if we had accurate, up-to-date current information? That was the business problem that really spawned this. So they said, well, okay, how could we get information that's highly accurate, up to date? And they're like, oh, machine learning, it's this new thing. Because this really technology activity started, I joined in 2018. It had almost been 3 years in existence inside American Family from an original inception, right? So they'd spent 3 years working on this. And machine learning, obviously, in 2014, Jeffrey Hinton's work, et cetera, kind of started really to take off. Cloud providers like Amazon and Google, Microsoft all started, making things like Kubernetes and machine learning services available. So there's a lot of body of work that was able to help propel that. Plus, they're like, well, where would we get all this training data we would need to do this? Well, we have it. We're insured. So it was a really unique thing for the business to be inside a customer, right? Or be a customer when it was founded, because that really let us know, are we really solving the problem? No one in an R&D capability is going to be told, you're not solving any business problems. We don't see it working. We're going to keep throwing money at you, right? People have accountability to shareholders and to board members, et cetera. So it was really working, though. And then it was like, wow, we have something really differentiated here. What do we do with this? Do we just keep it as an internal secret thing for us? Or we're already using it. We could probably own some of the business, which AmFam does have an equity interest in Arturo, non-controlling for those of your viewers and listeners. But, it's an opportunity for them to both get the benefit. They're early first adopter, own some of the business, but also, let's say American Family decides they want to go into a whole new market in, I don't know, lending, or let's say another geographic market in the US, because they don't write in every state. We will then have worked with other customers who are probably around those use cases, and they can still get the benefits of the product innovation, et cetera, versus if it was just internal, it would only be around where they focus and what they do. So ultimately, I think our customers benefit greatly from their background, but AmFam benefits from the innovation we do with other customers in the market as well.
You paint a picture that makes it seem just all the dots are connecting, everything's lining up, everything's perfect. Was it really just a smooth ride the last 3 years, or were there any major challenges that you had to overcome?
I think the proverbial joke is the duck on the water, right? It looks like it's just gliding along and everything's smooth, but underneath those feet are going like crazy, right? It was really interesting and created certainly some first-time career challenges for me to look at, how do you spin intellectual property and a bunch of proprietary internal data out of a large insurer into a startup, right? I'd never had to tackle that type of tech transfer, intellectual property issues, et cetera. There was, of course, then, how do we go from being an enterprise capability inside the enterprise to being a SaaS capability that serves multiple enterprises concurrently with SLAs and uptime and all those things. Oh, and authentication and tracking, because when you're an internal capability, you're just an internal service, right? You're not held to that. Now I'm going to sell our product to another major insurer, right? There's expectations on security, et cetera. So both of those two things were, certainly unique challenges. The good news is, the great team that I'm humbled to lead here at Arturo has an immense background, both in insurance and imagery and machine learning. We've got some of the top talent in the market. I couldn't be prouder of our team. And they've really been, really instrumental in helping overcome and work through those things. So, I would say up until our Series A, there was a lot of focus on the tech transfer, spinning out the team that had helped build this into the business, right into from American Family, largely from the data science and analytics lab, or DSAL, into some of the business. But those are some of the joys. Even if you come from a Fortune 500 to do a spin out versus a startup, you still are going to have some fun and some challenges. It was just a different set of them than I would typically encountered, like going from 2 people in a garage trying to like build something. It was like, oh, we got 9 people, we've got big customers, but now there's like all these lawyers and intellectual property things we got to figure out. How do we like harden this for enterprise? So they were fun to get through. In retrospect, at the time, they were obviously like any challenge, lots of frustrations, but we got through them. And ultimately, I think the market, the industry is better for it. If you had to give
a word of advice or a lesson learned for a spin out of the unique challenges that accompany that, particularly like a tactic that you found that worked well, looking backwards, what comes to your mind?
2 terms, patience and impatience. And so I think the real reality is internally, you have to recognize that when you're working in a spin out environment with a large corporation, it's not going to go as fast as a true startup would go. And actually, it's one of the other reasons American Family wanted to spin it out, was because the innovation rate they thought would increase if it was outside versus like, in multiple customers versus just them as a customer and their claims, underwriting, point of quote, people having to be the sole inputs for information. But impatience is important too. As you're spinning something out, because of the different cadence at which a very large Fortune 500 operates. Not that they're slow and stodgy, but just they're designed to keep doing the thing over and over really, really well. And so that means process, policy, et cetera. And a startup, which is trying to like go as fast as you can to like obtain customers, prove value, et cetera. And so representing the impatience of like, we need to get this out, we need to get these things done that you might not in a role inside that Fortune 500 is really, really key. Because, with anything, you don't push on it, it'll sit there, squeaky wheel gets the grease. But internally, you have to remember to be patient, because you are not just a startup, right? You are dealing with a large enterprise. They do have real legitimate policies and processes and procedures that they've got governance and accountability around. You can't just say, let's circumvent this whole thing on intellectual property. And then someone comes back years later and said it got done wrong. Like that wouldn't be defensible while raising capital, or to let our customers know we truly now own this intellectual property. It can't go back. It'll be inside Arturo forever. Those are really important things to get right. So patience, internally, knowing it's going to take more time. Impatience externally, going, we need to get this done as fast as we can.
I love it. So you mentioned earlier that you had your Series A. You also had a Series
B. Yeah.
B.
Yeah, we were really, really fortunate to announce just a few months back that we raised a pretty substantial Series B round led by Atlantic Bridge, which has, as their name might suggest, if you think about it, a focus on helping bridge the Atlantic for tech companies and enterprise tech companies in the US, also to Europe. And so as our business has expanded into other parts of the world very, very quickly, Europe is a next target market for us. We also have team members in Munich, Germany. So them as a partner, Atlantic Bridge as a partner, was really exciting for us. Also, as part of that, RPS, Rock Paper Scissors Ventures. Yes, there is a venture company named Rock Paper Scissors, and awesome. No, Samantha Wang, one of the principals there, assures me that is not how they make investment decisions with the partnership. But they actually have a really big focus on Asia. And a large number of LPs from the Asian tech community and American Asian tech community. So, we see, as we've worked in Australia and New Zealand, a path into Singapore, Japan, and other locations through their partnership. So couldn't be happier to have both of them. They're amazing assets to the business, and obviously big fans.
What would you say has contributed the most to your growth? Like if there was one particular tactic or element in the past few years that has really allowed you to grow faster, what would that be?
Just candidly, phenomenal customers. And I say that for a reason, right? So I jokingly say I've never done sales, and all I've done is sales, even though I have a technical background, because I think it would just happen like, I enjoy talking to people, and I was a technologist. I joke I'm a recovering software engineer. Fortunately, no lines of code at Arturo have ever been touched by me. which our CTO, Dr. Tuttle, is adamant it stays the case. But in my 20-year plus career history before Arturo, I engaged a lot with customers. And one of the things that in various roles I observed was, there's sayings like, 20% of your customers will take up 80% of your time, right? And things like that. And so one of the things we worked really, really hard at Arturo was to try to work with great customers, ones that we could truly partner with, that we were going to spend a lot of time with, but we were going to accomplish a lot together, right? Versus the customer that may be not truly ready to buy or not truly understand and not willing to invest the time into like really how this can be transformative. And that may be no fault of their own. They may have a lot of other priorities or initiatives going on. But when we would engage with potential customers early on the business, one of the fundamental things, since I was also doing the sales predominantly, I would ask my team after the engagement is, do we really think they're ready to work with us? Because if they're not, we're just pushing them to do something that's not in their best interest or just going to take away from other priorities. And we're not actually going to help them. And we're going to get frustrated because we really want to make them successful around it. And so we would say, if we couldn't say that, we would not tell them we wouldn't work with them, but we would just back away, right? And the ones that were really interested would come chase us and say, hey, we really want to do this. And the ones that really were interested were like, we didn't have to chase because they were like, we were both coming together at solving the problem. So I think that ended up creating a scenario where, nearly every one of our current customers were really intimately involved in what are their key goals they're trying to accomplish. Are they trying to reduce cost? Are they trying to increase their conversion rate when a customer comes to their website or an agent to get a quote, that they're going to win more of them because we've made it simple? Is it that we're going to reduce their loss ratios? Insurance basically is simple. Take more premiums in, then you pay out claims, right? It's a very simple rubric. So that means if you can more accurately gauge the premium for a property versus the risk it's going to present, you hopefully should decrease, the claim and increase the premium or overall what you're gathering. So we would always work really closely to say, what are those key things you're focused on? And can Arturo's technology help you do it? And then the last thing I'll say is now that we actually have a sales team, which I'm thrilled, we have this phrase, which is get to value quickly or eliminate the potential to get to value quickly. Meaning, if we're not the right thing to solve what a customer is trying to accomplish, we want to find that out as quickly as we can and then help point them to another tech company that can, or just let them go find it instead of trying to like become a solution for something we're not really great with. And I think that commitment really resonates with those potential customers that if Arturo wasn't right for the thing they're trying to solve now, they're going to remember that, we helped get them to where they needed to be. And hopefully when they have a problem we can solve, they'll come to us first.
Helping people understand your product, the technology in it. Is it easy? I mean, like, is it very straightforward? Do they get it right away? Or how have you made it easier in the messaging?
That's a really good question. I would say that anecdotally, it's easy for them to understand that we are somehow machine learning, which is like a big black box. And, even as a technologist, talking through like all the frameworks and every single thing we use per model is something best reserved for like our head of AI, Dr. Moody. She's amazing, right? But to a customer, I think it's kind of like, hey, you're looking at Google Earth, you're looking at Google Maps. We've all seen images of our home or something. Imagine if you can stare at it and see that's a building. Machine learning black box model goes like, oh, it's a building. It's exactly the size and it's a rubber membrane roof. People can comprehend, I think, with things like Siri, Google's voice assistant, they see cat videos on YouTube and like, how is it that like when I search for cats, it always comes up? Well, they know that some machine learning is happening there to classify what's in the videos. I think there's enough awareness, at least in enterprises, that machine learning can make sense of data. And so Arturo has connected some really smart machine learning models to make sense of imagery data about property and it's just sucking it out and turning it like into a spreadsheet, turn it into a CSV file that's, structured data response that I can now plug into a business system and say, where Alexander said his roof type is asphalt shingle and that's a asphalt shingle comes in, I can map that to Arturo's asphalt shingle coming in. And now I don't have to ask Alexander, and people, that clicks. I do think the true nuances of how machine learning works and, huge pipelines to do this like on demand, or, we did all of Australia as residential property in 48 hours last July, just like crazy, right? imagine saying you've got every image of every property in Australia and you have, less than a second to give me 35 attributes. And then doing that at like over 95% accuracy as a human would be just like absolutely impossible. So I think the more we put out there, the more the market is aware of how machine learning solves problems, the easier it is for the story to be told. But certainly inside how as they say, the sausage is made is a lot more complicated. The good news is the customers don't need to worry about that. They can see how accurate we are. We always say, hey, give me like a bunch of inspections you've done recently. So we know that like, what was there because a human climbed up and around the property. Now let's run those and then you compare. And, almost without fail, our customers say it's as accurate or sometimes more accurate than the humans, and certainly far cheaper and quicker.
So you're saying people don't necessarily care what machine learning is. They just have enough of an understanding of analogies of similar things that base knowledge is fine. They don't need to dig in.
It's like the App Store for Google Play or Apple App Store. Do you know what software development is? Probably not. It's code something, but it makes these apps. And I know that these apps bring me value and I can use them to do things I need to do. So I don't need to understand. And in fact, there's an interesting expression that I have, which is Arthur C. Clarke, the famous science fiction author, had an interesting quote that it's any technology sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic. But I think that in that era, that was an interesting statement, right? Wow, it's like magic. However, technology is so prevalent in our lives today that John Isaac Clarke said any technology sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable as technology. Because I don't think people really think like, wow, this is this is my phone. It's like almost just this piece of an, but it does magic for me, right? And I don't even think about it as magical anymore. Like we can talk to people on the other side of the globe. We can view places, far away instantly. We can get directions from here to like Tallahassee in a second. Nobody thinks of that as magical anymore. They don't even think of it as technology. So I think as technology is so prevalent, people just accept that something I do not understand whatsoever does something I can understand, and that brings me value, and I'm going to use it because it makes my life better or my business better.
I love the simplicity that it just makes our life better. That's all that really matters. For you, what can you paint of the future of where you guys are headed? Let's start with just the future of Arturo and the roadmap of where you guys are going.
Yeah. So I think, a couple key areas, obviously, our investors ask us these questions as we're like raising more money. And there's kind of 3 or 4 key areas. I'll start with the first 3 as they're near term. And the fourth is the aspirational vision, which we hope to achieve over time. But, the first is geographic expansion, right? We're one of the few companies in this space that has proven that not only can we do this in the US very effectively, but we can do it in other parts of the world. Right. We're obviously starting with like first world countries that have a single family residential homes, which, some types of cultures, even in first world countries like Europe, like Italy will, non-major urban modern city in Italy will have homes that are all built connected to each other. Right. You know what I mean? Not suburbia USA style. But, there are single family homes in Italy and Germany and other places around the world. So we're kind of beginning to expand our reach to offer insurers in these other parts of the world the same types of capabilities. Often that means different architectural styles that don't exist in Australia, New Zealand, the US, Canada, et cetera. And that's really kind of our first goal, is to begin to expand, to bring this value to really all insurers who deal with residential property. The second is commercial properties, right? There are obviously a lot of buildings out there that are commercial. Now, interesting stat, there's roughly 155 million structures in the United States. Of that, 125 million are residential in nature. So that only leaves about 30 million properties that are non-residential. You have what are called habitable residential, meaning like a hotel or a condo. It's not a single family home, but people live there or stay there. And then you've got office space, et cetera. So we really kind of want to move towards being able to, again, offer our capabilities to commercial insurers, understand those commercial properties so that they can understand who's there, what's there, structure, condition, risks, et cetera, just like our residential insurers do. And then, of course, lending, right? If you lend on this property, if you've given them the loan for it, might you care about what's actually there, how it's changing? If suddenly the property is in pretty bad disrepair and no one seems to be at it and there's a loan on it, maybe that could be a sign that something bad might happen from a default perspective. So there's a number of lenders who have reached out to us in the past few months, both in the US and abroad, saying, wow, how could we use the same type of information for making better loan decisions, for understanding what's happening in our loan portfolio, for maybe optimizing and streamline the loan process. And with the real estate market, what it is right now here in July of 21 in the US, and no stoppage in sight to the froth, that's really important, right? Being able to get that house, get that loan in, purchase that property due to inventory so low, et cetera. So we're excited about being able to expand not only geographically, but into both commercial insurance and the lending side of both residential and commercial as well. So those are kind of the key three areas that our team is really focused on for the next probably good 2 years. I'll add the fourth though, and I think it's an interesting one to mention. We fundamentally believe that at Arturo, we want to create greater understanding of physical places and spaces to enrich lives, right? That might mean you're enriched because you don't have to answer 80 questions. Maybe your life didn't get majorly better, but that Saturday morning with your coffee, not answering 80 questions, it made it better to some degree. But in time, our real vision as we go geographically, as we deal with different types of property, is that we can go beyond things like first world countries and potentially be able to facilitate offering financial insurance or lending products into other parts of the world that don't have access to that. One thing that most people may not be aware of is that lending and insurance really started when there was cadastral mapping, property maps. Like, this is where Alexander owns a piece of land, and here is what he has. And it started from taxation, largely in kind of the UK and hundreds of years ago. And without that, banks and lenders, and insurers don't know, like, what am I insuring? Where is it at? Well, now with capabilities like Arturo, if we think about expanding into parts of Latin America or Africa or Asia and underdeveloped areas, could we circumnavigate the need, just like Africa went straight to cellular instead of telephone lines? Could we circumnavigate a need for being able to have people go out and survey property, but instead use these remotely sensed images to understand what is there? And then enable maybe micro loans, micro insurance products in our parts of the world. So ultimately, I think our hope and goal is we're moving beyond where we are today in order to really truly enrich lives in parts of the world that aren't there yet. That's aspirational. It's years away, but it's something that we think about a lot here as a bigger vision for our business and the team than just helping lenders and insurers be quicker so their consumers are happier.
For you, JC, being in multiple companies that you founded, or being part of those startups and being in this technology world, what's driving you? Like what gets you up in the morning and just keeps you going and you're excited about coming from where you've been and where you're headed? What's driving you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think two key things. It's always hard, but getting to work with phenomenal people, I just take a lot of joy and pride in, and having such an amazing team and the privilege to lead them is awesome, right? This is my first time as CEO. I'll be the first to admit I've made plenty of mistakes, and I'm the first to admit I'll make a lot more. But working with a great team, solving those problems, overcoming those mistakes together is really great. Same goes for our customers, right? We have got world-class customers that have some phenomenal people to work with, and that just makes it fun. I'd say the other thing though is being able to do something that's really transformative and disruptive, right? I was really privileged to be exposed to the Google Earth and Maps team, more than 10, almost 15 years ago now. I can't believe I'm saying that. Wow. When I was kind of in my really early 30s, late 20s, and I was just blown away by it was, our lives changed, like Uber, DoorDash, so many things would not exist without the ability to say, here's an address, get me there, or route me around and just our awareness of our planet through kind of the geoliteracy that I looked at Google Geo team helped create. But I see a lot of industries that just don't have a comparable amount of groundbreaking change that helps them. And so doing something like what I'm doing at Arturo and the team here is working around is what really excites me. It is truly changing a way an industry can function, from old outdated information to long questionnaires with checkboxes and forms literally still exist, or people crawling around on roofs, which is dangerous, is time consuming, is with COVID, lots of people didn't want people coming in and around their homes right in the middle of the pandemic, right? So I think just doing it different and enabling a way to do it different is what I really am motivated by a lot.
I love it. Curious for you, as you said, this first time being a CEO, but you've led teams before. If you had to think of maybe one of the most difficult times as a leader that you were able to learn from, what can you share, just insights as a leader, whether it's another CEO or a leader, that you gained some insight out of that trouble?
Yeah. I mean, there's a laundry list long, and there's a bunch I'm going to probably still learn. I think probably one of the best things I can share, and this has been on my mind a little bit more recently, as our team has grown so substantially. We were, I think, around 30 people at the beginning of this year, and we're like 75 today, and just barely 6 months into the year. So I was like, wow, so many great people. And I think one of the things that any leader needs to do more and more of is, if you're hiring other great people in the business, to truly enable them. Like, I used to think my job at the beginning of spinning out the company was to say, this is what we need to do today. This is what you need to do. Like, this is what we get accomplished. So it's more directive, right? As you grow and scale a business, you're bringing in other great people. They know like what customer success is supposed to be. Our VP of customer success is amazing. Our VP of sales is amazing. Like, I don't need to say like, this is what we need to do for customer success today. They know more than I will ever on how to do that function. So the role as a CEO, I see as becoming more of an advocate for our customers or future customers, an advocate to remove blockers or hurdles from my team that only I could potentially, right, to enable them to go achieve phenomenal customer success, or bringing on through sales and marketing, fantastic new customers that we can truly drive value for. So I would say that that's a transition, though, going from like, people are looking at you as the person in the room to know what they should be doing, to the people in the room know what they should be doing. They're executing it, and you're there to help them, right? And to enable them, obviously still hold them accountable. That's part of the role still, but it's not directive anymore. You set the goals, the vision, the goals that will help us get to the vision. And then you're enabling these people to do, their best work, versus saying, this is the work you need to go do. And that's a sudden change, especially as you double your headcount so quickly. But it's awesome because you get to sit back and see kind of people make far better decisions and come with cool ideas than I ever could. So I'm giving credit for it too.
How does that feel? Like, how do you overcome that maybe an ability where in some ways you're not losing control because you are managing and leading them, but that's a change in your own shift of how you see your role itself. How did you manage that? How did you feel about that?
I think it wasn't necessarily a conscious decision as much as, I take that back. There was a few points where one or two of my key leaders, I've worked with very long here, some of my original co-founders, like, you got to just let us do this. Like, don't try to, like, my CTO is like, do you want to like try to solve this? I know you're a former engineer. It was like, look, we got great people, right? And sometimes there is that natural inclination, especially me having a startup background for 2 decades of, you all just dive in, you want to solve the problem. And sometimes you've got to let go and let the team solve the problem, because it's going to take me forever to know what they know about our technology stack or what the problem is. But it's hard to sometimes tamp that down. So I've learned to, when there's an issue or something, to really kind of just trust in the team. Sure, press the deadline or the timeline that we need to like be aware of, and but doing that too much will never actually motivate people. We'll just add one more distraction to them when they're already stressed and trying to solve a problem. So I have had some say, my leaders say, hey, we got this. Like, and I'm saying, okay, I'm going to back off. I'll wait for your update, right, in 8 hours. But I think another thing is, when you see the great work that the team begins to do when they're empowered, they understand the goal, the vision that we're trying to accomplish these goals to achieve. They come up with things that you never would. I like to joke, though, at the end of the day, being a CEO, when we do something great, it is the team that helped us that delivered that. When something is wrong, it is my fault. So, you still have to be able to look at when a challenge emerges, okay, this is how are we going to come together and solve this? Ultimately, right, our board and our customers, our shareholders do look to me to make sure that we're working through those things. But, that's just part of the job. So it is what it is.
Thank you for sharing your insight on that leadership. I'm kind of closing here on a last question of technology. What technology innovation, then in this industry, do you predict we'll see in maybe the near term or long term?
I think it's interesting. I can tell you which ones I wish we would see in the near term. Machine learning is a phenomenal technology. I've been through in my career both the advent of client server at the beginning of my career when people were going from mainframes to like desktop. I've been through the web, kind of 1.0, 2.0. I've been through the mobile explosion. I did a lot in mobile in my career from a technology perspective. And I really think this is kind of truly, one of the most transformative technologies I've ever had a privilege to work with. And I think more transformative potentially than any of the ones that came before it, though it couldn't have come without the ones before it. But I do think, the challenges of doing things like one-shot learning, right, where you don't have to come up with 8,000 examples across all geographic areas and different types of things in order for the machine learning model, just talking about what we do, to know that, that benefit of having American family data, having customers give us access to their data to make our products consistently better is because when you add more machine learning training data, the model gets better, right? Like that's just basically how it works. There's no secret machine learning scientist sitting somewhere tweaking convolutional neural net params with zero training data, and it magically now can tell you what type of roof you have. That just doesn't work that way. That said, one shot deep learning that would enable us to be able to have less of those and models able to kind of detect them would be amazing because we'd be able to just do a lot more for our customers. And I think the whole industry in machine learning feels very similar about that. I think the second thing, and then I think another thing we're kind of passionate about here is when we think about today, we provide physical property characteristics. Like it is a single family home. It is a 1-story. It is a asphalt shingle roof or concrete tile. Are now going into like conditional. Okay, the roof is concrete tile, but 22% of the tiles are chipped or damaged, right? To then go, the roof is this quality, which is kind of subjective versus objective. Like objective, it's a roof. Objective, it is a tile concrete roof. Subjective, and its quality is this. It's something that we're working with our customers a lot on. Everyone has a different way to define good or bad or okay, right? And so you have to be able to kind of create framework. But I think ultimately what the market really wants isn't data points that they make decisions off. They want to be told like, let me know anytime a home becomes bad or is trending bad, right? I don't want to necessarily count all the data points, whatever. I just want to be told like this property or these properties have issues emerging. I think that is kind of an interesting technological advancement from a machine learning perspective where we could apply higher level machine learning style models to underlying history about like when a home ended up having an issue, what were the things that happened before it? Can the machine learning models learn to detect those things and then tell us, hey, we're seeing signs that are indicating this home is going towards this type of issue? That I think could be really, really exciting. But I do think it's still a year or two off at least for us to be able to implement. But you always got to look to the future in order to understand kind of how you'll take advantage of those types of technological improvements when they begin to emerge.
Thank you, JC, for painting the future of what it could be, where it will be. Also taking us all the way back from the beginning of where you guys have been and where you're headed. For those that want to learn more, you can go over to Arturo.ai. That's ARTURO.ai. Thank you so much for your time, JC. This is a great conversation.
Yeah, Alexander, it's a real pleasure being here. Thanks so much for having me. Always happy to be back if future need, but thanks so much for the time today.
Absolutely. And we'll see you all on the next episode of UpTech Report. Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to uptechreport.com and let us know.